Welcome to Stay Your Time. This is the second video in a two-part series on time management. In the previous video, we discussed time management in general and why it is so important to college success. We looked at making sure that you're spending enough time studying for your classes. And then we talked about priorities and how important it is to be sure that your time aligns with your priorities in life. So we looked at the 4 P's, and as I mentioned, prioritize was P1 that we looked at in the last video. In this video, we'll be looking at P2, the planning process, P3, procrastination, and P4, the importance of personal connections. Before we get into the planning, I think it's important to take a quick assessment to determine if you are practicing successful student behaviors when it comes to time management. Review the following statements and determine whether you never do this, you sometimes do this, you usually do this, or you always do this. It's important when you begin to plan that you start looking at things from a monthly perspective. So start by putting together a monthly calendar. That's what would be the big picture. And then you can begin to work on your weekly and daily plans from that. Most experts agree that the best time to plan is on Sunday evening. Look at your upcoming week and ask yourself, do you have any major assignments, tests, projects, papers, anything like that coming up? This information should alert you to the number of hours that you need to be sure that you focus on every class. So let's say, for example, that you have a test in biology next week and an English paper due the following week. You would want to make sure that you allocate enough time to properly study for your biology test and start working on a rough draft of your English paper. You also need to continue to put in hours for your other classes. You can't ignore those classes just because you have to study for biology and write an English paper. When you work on a weekly schedule, make sure you're writing down all the things that you're required to do. If you write in times for class, your work schedule, and any other commitments that you have. Once you write all of those down, then start looking for pockets of time that you can study. Look for 2-hour blocks to work on the English paper. Look for a 1-hour block to practice math problems. Look for 2-hour blocks to study for that biology test. And then write those study plans down in the calendar. When you write things down, it's like making a commitment. So when you put it in writing, you're planning it and not just hoping it will happen. You have to make adjustments to your weekly and monthly schedules, and that's okay. Unexpected events do happen, and it makes you make changes to your schedule. But you have to plan your study time. Just hoping it will happen or waiting for some free time to do it will never occur. As I mentioned, schedules are a plan. They are not an absolute. If the plan changes, just adjust, but be sure that you are accomplishing what you need to do for the week. Speaking of to-dos, a lot of people prefer to do to-do lists, which is a great idea. To-do lists, though, need to be prioritized, and times need to be dedicated to those to-dos. The problem with only using a to-do list is that not all to-dos are priorities. For example, you may have to read chapters 3 and 4 for psychology class, and that's on your to-do list. But the deadline for that is 3 weeks away. If you spend a large number of hours reading for psychology, but you don't put in the time to study for that biology test, then you're not really practicing good time management behaviors. Now, how about focusing? Are you able to focus when you study? What about when you conduct research and you write a paper or you're preparing for that test? It's important that you put away any distractions and create an environment that will allow you to truly focus. If you schedule a 2-hour study session, but then you spend 3 minutes looking at a book, and then 5 minutes checking the phone, then 2 minutes thinking about what you're going to eat, and then let's say you go back to the book for 2 minutes and so on. That's not productive study time. You may have scheduled 2 hours for studying, but the reality is you've only spent about 45 minutes studying because you've been doing what's called switch tasking. That's right, switch tasking, or what some people call multitasking. This is a video that's a Dave Crenshaw video. He's a time management expert, and he says there is no such thing as multitasking. What you're really doing is switch tasking, which prevents your brain from ever getting into that study flow. I encourage you to watch this video and do the activity that he has in the video. It's called Multitasking is a Lie, and I think you'll see how well or how not so well you multitask. Now, spoiler alert, let me tell you what Dave Crenshaw has found. Switch tasking has some negative results. 3 main negative results. Number 1, the time it takes to complete the task goes up. It increases. Makes sense, right? If someone was switching from task to task and not 100% focused on that task, then it's going to take them longer to complete the task. So if you set aside 2 hours to study, but you switch tasks during that time, then you really need to devote 3 hours to get this 2 hours of study time in. Second, the number of mistakes that you make when you're switch tasking goes up. If you are more likely to make mistakes, that can result in lower grades, or maybe even having to redo an assignment, which then takes more time. Third, it can increase your stress levels because you're trying to accomplish too many things at one time. Every time the studying stops and the attention is switched to something else, the brain has to change gears. And then you go back to studying and you have to figure out where you left off and what you were doing before you switch to something else. This not only causes stress, but it can lead to brain fatigue. The brain is having to work overtime rather than getting into a steady flow of focusing on one thing at a time. Let's talk a little bit about procrastination. How many of you procrastinate? Most people do. The question is why? Why do you procrastinate? Do you think people are born procrastinators? I think it's a bad habit that you've probably developed. It's a choice you're making. You're choosing to do something besides the task that needs to be done. Why are you doing that? You have the control. So, how can you change? The first step is asking yourself why and really understanding why you are procrastinating. Is it that you don't want to do it? Is it that you're trying to avoid it? Is it because it's overwhelming? Is it because you're a perfectionist and you're worried that you might fail? Maybe it's all of the above. So you have to find some strategies, and planning can really help you reduce procrastinating as long as you implement and stick to the plan. But there are some other ways that I'll share with you on how you can beat procrastination. My one favorite technique is called the Swiss cheese approach. Now, what makes Swiss cheese unique? It has holes, and that's what this approach is all about. Let's say, for example, you have a paper due in 5 weeks and you want to procrastinate it because it seems like a very overwhelming task. You have to read a book and write a paper on it. You can begin to poke holes in the paper by breaking it into smaller tasks. So you have 5 weeks. So maybe you think about, okay, the first week I need to read at least half of the book. So by week 1, I'm going to set up a deadline that is to read half the book. By the end of week 2, I need to finish reading the book. By week 3, I need to write a rough draft of the paper. Then in week 4, I'm going to take the paper to the writing center or upload it into BrainFuse to be sure that I have it reviewed. And then in week 5, I'll edit the paper and turn it in. By punching holes in the paper and creating smaller tasks, it makes it seem less overwhelming. But you have to plan in order to do that. You would need to start as soon as you receive the assignment and start mapping out how you're going to achieve that goal. If you procrastinate until the week before the paper's due, you're not going to have time to implement the Swiss cheese approach. After you accomplish each step and each due date, set up a reward for yourself. For example, after week 1 of reading the first half of the book, then, spend some time doing something that you enjoy, video games or some other enjoyable activity to reward yourself for getting that week 1 completed. Procrastination is not the same thing as being lazy, and a lot of people confuse those two things, but they're not the same at all. Someone might be really busy and still procrastinating. The person's just substituting one task for another. This is a great video. It's called The Tales of Mere Existence Procrastination, and it is a good example of staying busy yet not accomplishing the task at hand. You'll be able to relate to the video. Another video I want to share with you is called The Procrastination Monster. And again, this is out on YouTube. It provides great tips on how you can beat that procrastination. Many people say that they get energized by that last minute work, which is why they procrastinate. Now, there is a difference between intentionally waiting to the last minute and procrastinating. The key word is intention. If you plan to wait until 2 days before something is due to finish the task, then that is a little different compared to putting off a task in exchange for doing something else. Think about why you're intentionally putting off the task. Is there a good reason to do that, or are you procrastinating? Think back to that 4-letter personality type that you received from Type Focus. Look at the last letter in the 4-letter type. Was it a J or a P? If it's a J, then that means that you're a natural planner. You prefer things to be planned and structured and deadline driven. If it's a P, then that means you prefer spontaneity. And that means your mind isn't always directed to planning. Both the J and the P procrastinate. However, it's a natural part of that J or that P personality. So make sure that if you have a P personality, that you come up with a method that works for your preferred learning style. Deadlines are important in both college and careers, so you don't want procrastination to lead to stress, anxiety, or impact your performance. The last P is personal connections, and this is about maintaining supportive relationships and helping you to achieve success. Surround yourselves with people who have similar goals and mindsets. Be with people who speak the same language as you. Things like I can instead of I can't, or I will instead of I won't, or that's possible instead of impossible. Have you ever been around a negative person? It is amazing how much misery loves company. It's important that the people in your life understand the time commitments of college. This can be especially difficult if you are a first-generation college student or if you're returning to school with the responsibilities of having a family. There may be times when the people in your life assume that when you're not in class, you're available to help out. Remind them that you're working on your goals. And you'd be surprised how many people understand that you have other priorities on your plate. Develop relationships with your faculty and staff. Work to develop those relationships so that you can begin to network and have people who will help you achieve your goals. If your instructor reaches out by email, it's important that you check your email and respond. Make sure you're asking the right questions. It can have a tremendous impact on your success. Get involved and build relationships with other students at Greenville Tech. This will help you when you need to form a study group or when you just need that support, because you're developing relationships with people who are facing the same challenges and struggles as you are. Your classmates can be excellent at helping to boost you when you need that extra boost. Ask for help. Another reason your relationships are key to your success is because you need to ask for help when you need it. It is not a sign of weakness. So I hope you enjoyed this time management series. What's next? Well, coming up, you'll be looking at your strengths and academic strategies.